Mr. Machiavelli, thank you for agreeing to this interview. Let me set the scene. Since 500 years sit between us, the ruler I want to ask about is named Vladimir Putin. He governs Russia, a vast nation, the largest on earth, and has held power there for some 25 years, well past the point where most modern systems would have required him to hand it on. He is past 70 now, and reporting by my colleagues from the Wall Street Journal has documented that he is directing a staggering sum of public money, the Russian people's money, not into armies or harbors, but into physicians and natural philosophers who promise to slow his aging. Some of them whisper of making him nearly deathless. You won't know the name, and that's fine. What's your first thought about the man?
The name means nothing to me, but the man I recognize at once. I have met him in a dozen guises. My first thought is that he has mistaken which enemy he is fighting. There are two struggles, not one. There is the struggle against rivals. That one a sharp man can win. And there is the struggle against the years, which no one has ever won, not once, in all the history I have read or lived. I served the court of Pope Alexander VI, who seemed to bend all of Italy to his will. And he died like any old man in his bed. And within a month, everything he had built was being torn apart by other hands. Your Putin is trying to dam a river that has drowned Caesars. The river always wins. The only thing a man decides is whether he built something worth remembering before the water took him.
His supporters offer a defense, and I want to put it to you fairly rather than dismiss it. They argue that Putin alone holds Russia together, that the day he dies, it splinters. So in their telling, his staying in power is service, not vanity. In my time, most nations answer that argument with institutions, courts, fixed terms, a peaceful handover, so that no single life becomes load-bearing, but judge the claim on its own merits. Is only I can hold it together ever true, or is it the story every strong man tells?
A single hand to build, that can be true. To seize a broken country and force it into shape, one ruthless man is often the only instrument that works. But to keep a country is a different craft entirely, and the man who confuses the two destroys himself. Let me tell you about Cesare Borgia, the Pope's son, perhaps the most gifted prince I ever watched at close range. He took territory by cunning and force. He murdered his enemies cleverly. He laid foundations a man could admire. But every brick of his power rested on one life that was not his own, his father Alexander's, who sat on the holy throne and shielded him. The father died, and this brilliant, terrifying young man, who had thought of everything, had not thought of the one thing, that he too would be standing in the cold the day his protector stopped breathing. He fell to nothing within the year. So when they say, Russia needs Putin alive, I hear men describing exactly that kind of throne, one that stands only as long as a single pulse. That is not strength. The proof is in the claim itself. If a state truly cannot survive one man's death, then that man has built nothing that deserves to survive. A real founder arranges things so the house stands without him. The strongman's story is almost always a confession dressed as a boast.
Let me press there. Putin guards his seat ferociously, yet he names no successor. Only young children in his orbit, and lieutenants he plainly distrusts. In a system with rules, succession is settled in advance and in the open. He has the opposite. From everything you've seen, what does that refusal to name an heir reveal about a ruler?
It reveals that he fears his own court more than he fears his enemies abroad. Understand the mechanism. The instant you name the one who comes after you, you have told every ambitious man at your table where to look, and it is no longer at you. Men turn their faces toward the sunrise, not the sunset. And I will tell you how conspiracies are truly born, for I studied this closely. It is not from hatred, as people imagine. Hatred makes men sullen. It rarely makes them brave. What makes them strike is hope, the belief that there is a prize to be inherited and a moment to seize it. So a fearful ruler keeps the matter deliberately clouded. No name, no rally, no rising sun for the courtiers to drift toward. It is shrewd for this year and ruinous for the century. The open succession you describe lets a state breathe past the death of any one man. Putin has chosen the reverse. He buys his own safety today by guaranteeing chaos the hour he dies. He would rather Russia burn after him than risk a rival before him. That is the tell. Not a founder protecting his work, a frightened man protecting himself and willing to mortgage the nation to do it.
Now, detail that struck me most as a reporter. Putin unveiled this longevity project to the public, wrapped in a noble promise that it would save the lives of ordinary Russian citizens. But our reporting found the number of lives it boasts. It will save matches. Almost exactly. The number of Russia's own soldiers killed in the war Putin launched in Ukraine. As a man who studied how rulers manage their image, what do you make of that?
You have just described the finest and ugliest art there is. I watched Ferdinand of Aragon, a famous pious king, forever with the name of God and the good of the faithful on his lips, wage cold and merciless campaigns and dress every one of them in the language of religion and mercy. The people cheered the mask while he did exactly as he pleased behind it. What you have uncovered about Putin is the same craft, only more naked. Here is a man who spends the lives of the young in Ukraine, and then takes his hunger to cheat his own death and dresses it in the robes of saving the people. And the arithmetic gives him away. He promises to restore in years of life almost precisely what he destroyed in actual deaths. But the deaths were real, with real mothers, and the restoration is a promise owed to no one in particular, to no grief. That is not generosity. That is a confession wearing a costume. And mark this, it only works on a people kept from asking questions. Where men are free to count the dead out loud and set the number beside the promise, as you have just done, the costume falls off. The mask needs darkness. Your work is the candle.
And the men around him, the physicians, the natural philosophers? Multiple sources tell us they may simply be telling Putin what he longs to hear, taking public money, promising wonders they can't deliver. You knew that kind of court. How does a ruler end up so badly served by the people closest to him?
I knew it from the inside, and it cost me everything. The deadliest creature in any palace is not the assassin. It is the flatterer, the courtier who studies not the problem before him, but the mood of his master, and shapes every word to please rather than to inform. And here is the cruel mechanism. The more power a man gathers, and the fewer voices he must answer to, the fewer people dare tell him anything true, because the truth might displease him, and displeasing him is now dangerous. So the powerful man, precisely because nothing checks him, becomes the worst informed man in his own realm, drowning in pretty lies, starved of one honest sentence. This is the quiet revenge that unchecked power takes on the man who holds it. Now place at the center of such a court a master desperate not for victory, not for gold, but to not die. He is the perfect victim because he wants the lie. He will pay a fortune for a beautiful falsehood and have an honest man thrown out for an ugly fact. A ruler who had to face free critics and a free press might be told to his face that he is chasing smoke. Putin has arranged a Russia where no one will ever tell him. That is the more pitiable thing. With all his power, he has purchased the right to be deceived.
A last question, Maestro. If you could send one thought across these 500 years to Vladimir Putin, not flattery, but an honest assessment of the path he's chosen, what would it be?
I would tell him a simple thing that took me a lifetime and a great deal of pain to learn. No one has ever been loved or remembered for the years he clawed back from death. We remember men for the order they leave standing behind them, and for whether they trusted their people enough to let that order outlive them. I watched the mightiest figures of my age, Alexander, Cesare, men who made all Italy tremble, vanish so completely that within a season it was as if they had never lived, because they built everything around their own breath and nothing that could stand on its own. And I have watched humbler founders become a kind of immortal, not in the flesh always rots, but in the thing they made, which kept working long after the maker was bones, because they had the courage to make themselves unnecessary. That is the only deathlessness a ruler can actually buy, and it is far cheaper than what Putin is spending. He is paying a fortune to add a few trembling years to one frightened life, when the single eternity truly available to him costs nothing but the one thing he cannot give, to let go, to be genuinely missed, and to leave a Russia standing that did not need him to stand. He could have it tomorrow. He's the only thing in his own way.